It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I know the anxiety that comes with watching a loved one struggle with a nonlinear path. This podcast was created to fight back against the narrow picture of success painted by social media. Each week, we share authentic stories from people who changed course, maybe failed, and ultimately found their own definition of success. These are the stories you need to hear to prove that changing your mind is common and you don't have to have it all figured out at 18. So if you're a parent or you're a young adult looking for a little proof, you're home. Now let's get into today's episode. And if you'd like to explore how I can help your young adult, you can actually schedule a free consultation through my website link in the show notes. Today, my guest is Kasey Bradshaw. Kasey was born and raised in South Carolina before moving to Nashville, where he earned his master's in mental health counseling from Belmont University. After graduating in 2018, he worked as a therapist and gained extensive experience supporting individuals with complex mental health and substance use disorders. Kasey later found his professional home in admissions, where he combines his clinical expertise with a calm, compassionate approach to help families navigate the treatment process at BrightQuest Treatment Centers. Outside of work, he enjoys spending time with his wife, Brianna, their 2-year-old daughter, Murphy, and watching sports and playing music with friends. 2 other fun facts about Kasey in case anybody is interested in knowing this, and it's just more of like a personal plug for me because I know Kasey well. We actually have run several half marathons together, is that Kasey is a big fan of hockey and also an avid lover of hot sauce. So in case you're curious to connect, whether it's about BrightQuest or just about some of the things that he enjoys doing, based on listening to his interview, I highly encourage you to make those connections as well. So enough of the in the weeds kind of fun facts about this guest. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Kasey. All right, Kasey, I'm so excited to have you as a guest on the podcast. Here we are. I feel very fortunate to know you in this workspace, personally and professionally. And I've heard you talk about some of your young adult years and your upbringing, but I bet there's a lot of people that don't know it. So I'm kind of curious to just bring your story to the table. Let's go ahead and just jump right in. Tell our listeners, where did you grow up and what was the messaging that you were hearing about what you're supposed to do after high school?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joanna. This has been, I think we tried to do this 6 months ago and now we finally made it happen. So mostly that's my fault. So yeah, I'm from a small rural town in South Carolina. It's called Hartsville. It's about 5,000 people in a very impoverished town as well. So I grew up, I would say, below the poverty line, if you will. And education was always seen as the way out, if you will. So my mom, from both sides of the family, was the only person to ever graduate college, before me. So it was always really pushed upon me that, okay, to get out of here, which I wanted to do, college is the avenue, college is the way. And so, I wasn't really sure how that was going to happen, given that, I had really good grades, but the cost is not cheap, as everyone knows, for higher education. And so was really unsure of how we were going to make that happen. And luckily, through scholarships and now overwhelming student loan debt, I was able to go to college. And once I got, going into my undergrad, I wanted to get a major in audio engineering. My goal was to not necessarily be a musician, but I wanted to tour with musicians, if you will, be kind of behind the scenes. And after one semester of doing that, I realized this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life very quickly. So I remember calling my mom and talking to my advisor, we got to do something different. I don't know what it is. And I ended up meeting up a professor in the social entrepreneurship department, which is still right now to me a useless degree, but I have pursued it anyway and got my undergrad in social entrepreneurship. And as I was going into the spring semester of my senior year, I'm months away from graduation. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to start a nonprofit, which is what I'd been studying. And I knew I didn't want to, work for a nonprofit, be in nonprofit management. So another professor who I would say was very much a mentor in my life, he said, why don't you take my pastoral counseling class? Because I went to Belmont, it's a Christian school, and that was one of the kind of first introductions into therapy, if you will, prior to going to college and even going into, I'd even say my senior year, my thoughts around therapy were, why would you pay to talk to someone? You could just talk to a friend, right? Like that was my approach. I'd never gone to therapy myself. I thought it was all, a hack, if you will.
Kasey, I'm like bursting at the seams right now because I'm like, it's funny how life takes you on the path that it does, because that could not be further than the truth from how you feel today.
Agreed. I've seen the benefits of therapy in my own life and, plenty of the people that I've worked with. So like it really was just that I had never had any introduction to it other than like a high school psychology class, like where we spent most of the time talking about Freud, and nothing against Freud, but Freud definitely had some odd ideas at times. I mean, I'm not saying that he was all wrong, but they were odd. But I ended up taking this class, and part of the class, he would do dream work because he was a former therapist himself and would work with you around analyzing dreams. And I volunteered to do this as a session in the class. And even that, 50-minute class where, maybe half of it was used for that was transformative. And I was like, this is what I want to do now. And he said, well, you just need to hold on for about a year because we're going to start a program here at Belmont for mental health counseling. And so I took a year off from school and worked for my girlfriend's dad, because who was now my wife. So my father-in-law. But to anyone listening to this, I highly recommend not working for your significant other's father. I have nothing against my father-in-law, but if he was on here, he'd tell you he's a hard man to work for, and it just creates some odd, some difficult relationship dynamics. It's Monday through Friday. In the position I was in, I was a gopher, if you will. I was whatever they told me to do, I had to do it, and specifically him because he was the owner of the company. So it was hard to switch from that to, hey, let's go get dinner on Saturday.
I can only imagine.
But I will say, for that first job, he offered me $15 an hour. And that to me was like, well, why do I need to go back to school? Like, I am set for life. $15 an hour was like like such a large sum of money to me, which looking back now, I probably pay that much in childcare per year. Right. So but I actually, to kind of conceptualize that, I got a book from my house because my mom recently moved, and I opened it and it had one of my dad's pay stubs from when I was in high school or middle school, excuse me. And he was making $35,000 a year. My mom was also making maybe in the 20s, 30s with 3 kids. I have no idea how they did it. We did grow up in a double wide trailer. It was very low income, but we never really went without. Ramen might have been the dinner of choice, instant ramen, but we still survived, if you will. So, yeah.
All right. So walk us through, though, because at this point you're taking a year off. You're working for your father-in-law, or soon to be eventual father-in-law, with the hopes of going back to Belmont for this master's in counseling program. Did you end up going back?
I did end up going back. So I took that year off, and then they did launch the program thankfully as I was promised, because I was looking at other schools. I looked at a place in Boston, and that would have been a total kind of uprooting and changing of my life when I'd already kind of built a community in Nashville. So I really wanted to stick around. So I applied, got in, and was ready to go. And actually, proposed to my wife and got into school, but I tried to still work for my father-in-law and have this, or soon-to-be father-in-law at that time, and have a part-time job, and it just wasn't working. Between internship and the master's program, I couldn't do it. So I ended up being an Uber driver, working for an after-school care program, and then also doing audio for a nearby church, just so I could, all these random odds and ends could make ends meet and at least cover rent while my wife was really the breadwinner. At the time, I truly wouldn't have gotten through grad school without the support of her, especially just because I wouldn't have had the money to live, if you will, just because I was making $10 an hour at the school. Uber, when you're not driving peak hours, it does not pay well. And I was driving like in the middle of the day because I was like, I didn't want to drive at night. So anyway, doing all these odds and ends, and I did eventually make it through the program. But to that extent, I mentioned, I thought therapy was a hack, back in the day. And it's weird going into the program. I still had never done therapy myself, never had done it. Finally had a professor say, if you're doing therapy, you probably should be in therapy. And I was like, I don't need that. But eventually, my wife was like, we should do some premarital counseling. And that was actually how I kind of dipped my toe in the water. And I was like, man, I think I want to do this for myself, and was able to start, finally pull the trigger on going to my own personal therapy, which was pretty transformative for me, to see kind of to be in the other chair, because I was starting to already be in the therapy space in an internship as the, therapist, if you will, but had never been therapized, if you will. So it was really a great experience to finally get that myself. And so finally in 2018, I graduated, got a job where I was interning at, again, in a non-linear way. I got a job where I was working at because they needed, at the time, I couldn't become a therapist there because I hadn't graduated yet, but my internship ended. So it was this kind of weird period. So I worked in the records department. And when I say I worked in the records department, it was myself in the copy room scanning in insurance records, All
right. So Kasey, tell us what your actual job title is. Give us the 90-second elevator pitch for anybody that's like, what the heck is BrightQuest? Tell us what we need to know.
Great question. So I am the National Director of Admissions and Outreach, so I oversee the admissions and business development for BrightQuest. We have a location in Nashville, Tennessee, and another in San Diego, California. And we are a long-term treatment facility for individuals struggling with severe and persistent mental health disorders. We have the full continuum of care. Our clients tend to stay with us about 6 to 12 months, and we mostly work with young adults. We don't necessarily have an age cutoff, but with the way our program is set up, being a therapeutic community, focusing on family and systemic change, and then also an emphasis on work development and independent life skills, it tend to works really well for those individuals who have never really successfully launched, if you will. Individuals that maybe because of their mental health issues, they haven't been able to complete college, or they haven't been able to get a job, or maybe, they had parents who were doing everything for them, or they had caretakers, whether that was, a nanny or whatever it may be, a housekeeper who was really providing all of those independent life skills that a lot of other emerging adults tend to learn. Whatever reason, they don't have the life skills necessary to be successful. And so we can not only, help address that really severe mental health piece, but help them launch into whatever their highest level of independence can be. And that looks different for each and every client, as, I know you're fully aware, but we want to make sure that we're helping clients achieve their highest level of independence.
And for anybody that's listening to or wants to kind of explore more, we'll make sure that we have the links in the show notes, not just for BrightQuest website, but also for Kasey's contact so that you can reach out if you have any questions too, not just about admissions. But I mean, I think the other like call to action too is like you're hearing a snapshot of Kasey's personal story. So it's not just like, hey, here's this program and this person that works for this program. It's like, here's a human that started at this really small town in South Carolina who is shared a little bit, right? That's the divulsion right here of like, I have shared vulnerably some of my own personal kind of journey up to this point where I am. And now we're getting to the professional piece. We don't have enough time in the day. We could probably yuck it up for hours. Fun fact, Kasey and I like to run races together. And so we've got another one coming up in the fall in case anybody else is interested in learning more. We'll also make sure we have that in the show notes. But the piece here is validating and verifying exactly what you just said. Like what BrightQuest does, who they serve, is why this podcast actually exists, right? Like the idea of what success looks like for young adults is not unanimous. It's not linear. It's not the same for everybody. And so sometimes it is a matter of identifying like, what is somebody capable of? Like, what is their level of independence? What is their career path? What is their need for support? And so I think that actually the company that you work for actually works well blended with the mission and vision for this podcast.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, even my personal story isn't exactly linear. I think I took the more traditional route of going to college and then I got a master's and then got a degree. But, especially with the clients we work with, it isn't, all right, I went to college, I graduated, I got my first job, I, put a mortgage down on my house and now I'm on to the races, right? It's, maybe I'm not launching into adulthood until I'm in my 30s, which isn't, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's also no right answer. I really do think, especially nowadays, that the traditional previous trajectory of like, you go to college, you get a job, that's how life plays out is just not how it works. I mean, I've talked about myself a little bit. My sister-in-law is we jokingly tell her she's a college dropout, because she is a college dropout, but she's been the director of sales for multiple companies and has been really successful in her own right, carving her own path that is not the linear or normal path anyone would take, but that doesn't mean you can't be successful or you can't find success. The one other thing I wanted to mention, because I think it's appropriate for this podcast, growing up, career and vocation were always intertwined. And I do think, as I was going, and I grew up as a Christian, I jokingly call myself a recovering Christian now, but in that everything felt like it was supposed to be a calling, at least in my experience of Christianity. It was, this is what I am called to do. And so it felt like this is this higher purpose that is calling me into this. Whereas, now I really do feel this distinction between vocation and career, where it's like, I very much enjoy my job. It fulfills me. I love it. And it's not everything. It's not the biggest defining piece about me, right? Like, and I don't want it to be. Like, I'm a father. I have a baby girl I love to death. I have my wife who I want to be a good husband to. I want to be a good friend to all of my friends. I want to be a good son to my mom. So on and so forth. I can keep going, but your job or what you're doing doesn't have to be this grand calling or the thing that brings you ultimate fulfillment, right? Like I also play in a band on the side. Am I ever going to make money from that band? Never, but it's fun and it fills my cup, right? So I want to keep divulging in that. I think it's okay to sometimes see jobs as a means to an end, if you will. It doesn't have to be, this is the thing that defines me. I am my job. I mean, it's the same thing we say with clients with their diagnoses, right? Like, you are not your diagnosis. You may be diagnosed with X, but that doesn't mean you are X.
And I feel like that is the perfect note to end on. So again, anybody that is listening, please reach out to Kasey. Kasey, thank you for carving out time to be a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Joanna. You'll have to send me another shipment of hot sauce here soon.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guests for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email joanna@lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.